So hello everybody, good morning and welcome to the Health Forum Gastein. We are very thrilled that we have today an opportunity to put childhood cancer in the scene, and we will share our learnings in cross-border collaboration to foster actually other initiatives, and maybe we can really pass on important learnings. So we are on site, so welcome all the people here in the room. And we have also an online audience. Please don't forget, you also can tweet #EHFG2023. And just for an introduction, please tweet if you may. And I think we should have a speaker slide now coming up to introduce all the speakers in the room. Oh, here we are. So very much welcome, and I'm thrilled to welcome István Ujeli as a member of Sant and the ENVI committee. So thank you for finding the time and joining us to this important meeting today. Thank you very much. I'm also thank Leila Kamerich to be online with us. She had some unpleasant health issues that she couldn't travel, but I think thank you for being available and still be with us in this way for this discussion round. She is a representative of CCI Europe and represents the voice of our parents and survivor community. I also may introduce Gilles Vassal. He has a long-standing history of an outstanding pediatric oncologist, deeply involved in the cancer agenda as a previous SIOP Europe president and driving ITCC Accelerate and many important initiatives. So we will hear him. And we are also very thrilled to welcome Alexandra Tamas as a representative of industry, FBIA, and she will bring her knowledge to the table today. I am myself also a pediatric oncologist working in Vienna at the Research Institute and hospital, and I'm actually coordinating the EAN reference network and deeply involved with SIOP Europe for many years. So let's get started into the session, and we thought we will run a Slido. There will be a few ones today, and so can I have the Slido up so that people can actually, here we are. If you scan the code, please go on Slido, because we want to create a word cloud and ask a very simple question. And that is, what do you associate with childhood cancer? Just to bring us up to speed and to see what the word cloud will tell us. So there is 1 minute. That we give it a chance. So it's coming in rich and growing. Okay, we wanted to devote just 1 minute. And I think it gives us the wide challenges that we are actually facing. And families are extremely important childhood cancer is a severe disease. We need research. We know there is inequalities. We have trials. We have a rare disease more than anything. So I think you all can be inspired by the World Cloud. And we just stop it here. Thank you very much. And I think we now go to our speakers on this panel to go a little bit more into the details that we want to talk about today. So I would like to give all the speakers to give like a 3-minute statement, and I invite Gilles Vassal to kick off this round. Please, Phil.
Thank you, Ruth. Good morning. Each year in Europe, 35,000 children and young people are diagnosed with cancer. Thanks to 50 years of collaboration of academic research at the European and international level, the cure rate now is achieving 80% at 5 years in Europe. Which means that there are about 400,000 childhood cancer survivors who are European citizens and who do suffer of sequelae of the treatment, 60% of them. We need to cure them better. But it means also that there are 6,000 children and young people dying of cancer in Europe each year. This is one school bus of 32 children and young people every other day. We need to cure more children with cancer. These are the two major objectives of the Europe, of the community working with the parents. But there are inequalities, and we need to tackle those inequalities. I would like to share with you 2 examples. The first one, on the next slide, is showing the probability of cure in the different European countries. And in this pink map, you will see that across Europe, it's mainly 80%, but in some countries, there are less than 80% probability of survival. And you see that the intensity of the color of the pink really shows the inequalities in probability of cure across Europe for these children and young people. Clinical research is absolutely a key element of this way to achieve better treatment for all these children. And we are talking about academic research. We are not talking about industry research. But there are major inequalities, and this is the second map I would like to share with you. This shows, over the last 12 years, that among the 438 clinical trials open in Europe for children and young people with cancer, the inequalities, if you can show the next map, which is the blue one, with the color across Europe, you will show the inequalities in accessing these clinical trials, with clearly a very strong message. We need to tackle these inequalities if we want to cure more children and if we want to cure them better. This is a message I wanted to share at the beginning. Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Leila, can I ask you to come in next and to point out the most important driving topics that motivates parents to speak up and to work together on the European level? Leila, the floor is yours.
Thanks, Ruth. Thanks, Gilles. Since I'm coming from Bosnia and Herzegovina, and we call it Eastern Europe, I was lucky, among lucky ones, that my daughter survived, but with late effects, with severe late effects she faced after the treatment. So thanks, Gilles, for mentioning inequalities. This is my topic, and this is what I like to emphasize every time I have a possibility to talk about childhood cancer. So what's going on in so-called East Europe? 80% of kids survive in whole Europe, but that's not the case in East Europe. their parents are facing with issues of, for example, covering the costs for medicaments and for treatments. Then procedure for cost approval is a really long procedure, and sometimes it can end up like we don't like to end up. We are all aware of essential medicine. That was really amazing project. We also participated from patient point of view, but this is not in place. This essential medicine list is not in place in each clinic in each country. Rare cases are not always approved to be treated abroad, and parents and patients are facing with really big issue there. There are no innovative drugs, no clinical trials. And in case of treatment abroad, parents sometimes cannot choose where they want to treat their kids. So this is an example from EU countries. The countries which are outside of EU, but still in Europe, the situation is even worse. There are no access to clinical trials. In my country, kids cannot be treated with clinical trials. No access to innovative medicine. Complicated procedure for drug supply. And I think my 3 minutes just exceeded. So parents are facing with the shortage of the medicine. They have to collect money to treat their kids. And that's why the difference in cure rate is that huge between West Europe, developed Europe, and East Europe. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Leila, because I think to really make this very clear how huge the efforts from the parent side are in countries as yours by background, and we appreciate these efforts, but they are enormous. And I think this will touch on some of the topics. We will come back later, because ultimately we have to deal with the core theme that health is a member state competency, and then it's also a high policy issue, how to work together and make things happen. I myself will have a short work on the European Reference Network because it fits to the topic that Gilles introduced. May I have the first slide? Just to the background, pediatric cancer is one of the 24 European reference networks for rare diseases. We are proud to be part of the community. And what I want to highlight with this, I think it's an opportunity of highlighting the pediatric community. We have more than 90 clinics which were suggested by the respective member states to be part of the network. There are accreditation process, so it's like a core of what we are doing currently in Europe. And we are completely embedded in the structures of SIOP Europe, which is our common voice, interacting with the Commission and with the broad ERN-BED community. The next slide that I shortly want to mention, another map, if you can bring it up. So very briefly, while we are waiting for the map, is what's one of our driving themes. We want to treat kids and at home if possible, and if standards of care are fulfilled. We have oversight on this, and but we are also working on it to take children cross-border whenever it's needed for highly specialized interventions, which only can be found in a few places in one of the European Reference Network institutes. So there is also established structures now how to direct patients. On this map, you can see, and we're very proud with the waves of calling for members. We have at least one representation in every country of political Europe. So this is to be remembered that here we are working with the political Europe. And what I want to mention is also when we are screening and monitoring our successes, then we see that more than 6,000 patients actually are taken cross-border for such interventions or improved diagnostics. So now I will come to István Ujjeli, and I would like to invite you to shed light on the EU legislative processes that you have insight. Please, may I invite you to give your message. Thank you.
Good morning, Ashtain. Greetings from Riyadh, from Saudi Arabia. I really wanted to be together with you in person, but the UN has a big event in Riyadh, and we just started it, and I have to be there. As I have also one title, which is a special ambassador title in the UN. But I would like to tell you I'm not a professional like you, Ruth, but I'm a parent. I'm a father. I have 6 kids, and unfortunately I lost my father because of cancer, who was a doctor. So I know very well what Leila told us, the feeling, that's kind of terrible feeling. That's why, as a politician, I really wanted to do something. Before the pandemic, together with other colleagues, I was one of the initiators of the European Health Union program. This European Health Union is a must from my point of view. And in this sense comes digitalization and European health data space, which would facilitate the sharing of information and best practices among member states, and thus create the opportunity for healthcare workers to get to information faster and easier. And that's why we need to promote consistent treatment guidelines that are applicable across borders, and we need to encourage collaborations between public healthcare systems and the private sector for innovation and resource sharing. And I would like to also see that in that member states, patients have the same chance to receive the adequate treatment for their condition. Same applies to the access to medicines, as it is untenable that certain, often prescribed drugs are not available in every country. The Smart Care project is a landmark initiative of the Europe's Beating Cancer Plan under the umbrella of the EU for Health program. It is a great digital tool to reduce the communication gap between survivors and health and social care providers. And I'm very proud of that. I had the chance to host the one part of the kickoff event in the European Parliament this March. I think the Smart Care and similar projects can foster the health union further. But for that, first, it is important to establish the dedicated network for sharing experience and insights from successful cross-border healthcare collaborations. Furthermore, the creation of a platform to facilitate collaboration on EU-funded projects, fostering innovation and knowledge exchange could also be a big help in advancing the health union. I would like to tell you as a politician, I really know that we are responsible for support those networks and those professionals who would like to help to our nations. But again, and this is my last sentence, from Hungary, from Eastern Europe, after Leila, I would like to tell you, we have to give all the Europeans to the same chance to survive everywhere, in all the countries, to all the Europeans, and this is our responsibility.
Thank you very much, István. I think it's very important to have the politicians being convinced on this importance and to help everybody together to overcome these inequalities that we are currently still facing. So thank you very much for engaging with us and raising the voice. So I'm now inviting Alexandra Damasch from FBIA to make her point on the access to medicines from industry perspective, please.
Thank you so much. Thank you. It's working, right? Good morning, everyone. It's my pleasure to be with you this morning, and thank you so much, Sayupi, for inviting and the opportunity for us to contribute to this very important debate. I was asked to speak about the difficulties in discovering, developing, and producing, bringing new innovative medicines to the market. But please allow me to maybe start on a positive note rather than going deep diving into the challenges straight away. And start by saying that we've actually come a long way when it comes to the development of new medicines for children. And in our view, this is thanks to the pediatric regulation that came into force in 2007. And as a result, we have close to 300 innovative medicines that were approved between 2007 and 2019. We have seen a 50% increase in the proportion of clinical trials that involve children. And pediatric investigation plans are now part of an integral part of developing any new medicine. Actually, companies have an obligation to study new medicines also in a child population, and every medicine that is developed for an adult has an obligation to be studied in a child population if that disease actually occurs in children. Otherwise, companies receive a waiver. And according to our members, there are 600 new medicines currently in the development. So I took very close note of the words coming up on Slido. But there is also a positive, and I wanted to start with that. Now, when it comes to the challenges, we agree that there is much more to be done. Because there still are unmet medical needs, particularly in childhood cancers, that need to be addressed. And now is the perfect time. We have a revision of the pharmaceutical legislation, of the pediatric regulation, and it's really a perfect time to focus on more child-centric approach. But coming to the challenges, because there are a few, there is, I would start by saying that there is, first of all, maybe a misconception that it takes too long for pediatric investigations plans to be developed, and sometimes it's not justified for companies to receive a waiver and not to conduct clinical trials in children. But in our view, that is not the case. This is not the reason why there are delays. Developing a new medicine for pediatric use has actually many very specific challenges, whether that's scientific or operational or ethical. And just to focus on a few of the scientific or a few of the challenges. First of all, there are many rare and pediatric diseases for which there is no science yet. We have not yet found the reason of the disease, or there are not enough. There is not enough science. Then I would say that the pediatric population is quite diverse and heterogeneous. So we have newborns up to adolescents that need specific safety and efficacy and dosing requirements. Standards of care differ from country to country, and we've seen the maps quite clearly about the differences. And first and foremost, conducting clinical trials in this small population, potentially dispersed across Europe, has its significant cost and risk as well. And maybe one last thing, there is a difference and an insufficient infrastructure and network to carry out pediatric clinical trials across Europe, and we've seen that on the maps. But it's definitely something that our industry wants to address, and it's actually in the interest of patients and companies and all stakeholders to be involved in a process. So from our industry point of view, we are contributing in public-private partnerships. We have projects in the Innovative Health Initiative, and as well, together with other 8 organizations, we have launched a rare disease moonshot to address those scientific and clinical trials gaps that occur in research, and make sure that we have the clinical trials that address the needs of patients from the pediatric community. So I'll stop there in the interest of time, but thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you very much. I feel Jill getting ready for a response, but not yet. Okay. We have another slide.
Because I have things to say.
I know. So it's an invitation to our audience, because it's just to a little bit feedback round. If we envisage eliminating inequalities across Europe, please prioritize what you think would be the most important drivers to overcome current inequalities. And again, it's 1 minute that we wait and see that coming in. So it starts to stabilize in priority, but still moving a little bit. A few more seconds. Yeah, and I think we can close the answers and just see that the feedback round, although is really prioritizing the cross-border clinical trials, and we will come back to this. Funding, solving the medicine shortages, and contributions of the revision of the pharmaceutical legislation. So I think, having had this warm-up feedback round, I would invite to start our discussions that we will try to run together. And I would like to invite Gilles to go first, because I think he wanted to respond. I could feel it. So give us your views on your prioritization, also in view of the inequalities, what needs to be done.
Yeah, thank you, Ruth. Just one comment on the revision of the legislative pharmaceutical legislation. Alexandra, I agree with you. The pediatric regulation is a success, but not in pediatric oncology. There has been only 16 new medicines approved for the treatment of children and adolescents with cancer since 2007, the implementation of the pediatric regulation. And we have been calling for a revision of this regulation to be fit for purpose, addressing the unmet needs, and make it right. So regulation, the pediatric, is not a success for pediatric oncology. And we need this tool to innovate, to cure more children, to introduce new treatments in the frontline treatment. And the collaboration with industry is important, but they really need to incentivize even better and to make it right for the patient. So this was a little bit of modification I wanted to share after your talk. And I think the second point about EU funding, I think there have been, over the last 3 years, with the Beating Cancer Plan, with the Cancer Mission, a clear message at the European level, putting childhood cancer under spotlights. And there are more funding now than in the previous years, but it's not enough. And especially, we don't have the mobilization, the engagement of the member states. Ruth mentioned the European Reference Network, PETCAN, and other ERNs, major tools set up by the European Commission, really to help cross-border access to care and improving care for all patients with rare disease. But this is underfunded, and we need an engagement of the member states as well at the European level, really to invest in better treatment, in access to better treatment, and access to clinical trial. So these were my 2 comments on the revision of the regulation and wide European funding.
Thank you very much, Gilles. As this comes to the pharmaceutical legislation, I'm just wondering, István, do you have more comments from your side on that one, as you are in the policy processes deeply involved? We cannot hear you yet.
Thank you,
yes.
Lucy. Yes, I'm here. I have to tell you, I really like the intention of the European Commission concerning the farm package, meaning to put the patient into the center of it. The EU pharmaceutical legislation can facilitate the expedited approval of medicines, which can be especially important for orphan diseases. By streamlining regulatory processes and incentivizing pharmaceutical companies to develop treatments for rare diseases, more options may become available to patients. The legislation can also address issues related to drug pricing and reimbursement, which often pose barriers to medicine accessibility. By ensuring fair pricing and reimbursement policies, we can have to make sure that the patients have access to the treatments they need. The legislation can also provide incentivize for pharmaceutical companies to invest in research and development for orphan disease. And this could be achieved through grants, tax incentives, and extended patient protections for rare disease treatments. Thus, collaboration with international partners is essential for this and also for improving medicine accessibility for orphan disease. In addition, the EU should seek partnership with other regions to pool resources and knowledge in the development and distribution of rare disease treatments. Lastly, it is crucial to involve patients' advocacy groups in every decision that is to be taken, because besides the medical practitioners, doctors, they are the people who can provide valuable insights into the specific needs and challenges faced by individuals with orphan disease. Again, what I mentioned the last round, the previous round, it's very important to have a stronger stronger coordination on European level. I don't know when we will finalize the package. Not tomorrow, I think, but the European Union, also I think the industry need it very much. So, for example, one last sentence, and maybe Alexandra and other colleagues, partners heard about it, know it. In the European Parliament, I also push my colleagues, the policymakers, to speak with the industry, because, for example, to create, to have one new pharmaceutical package without the interest of the industry is not useful. So we are not at the beginning, but somewhere at the middle of the process. I hope it will be useful for the patients, for the doctors, and for the industry too.
Thank you very much. Gilles, the three most important aspects in the pharmaceutical legislation, what do we wish to see for pediatric cancer? Can you just give us a quick spotlight?
Sure. You keep in mind that pediatric oncology is not a market for industry. The regulation is working on obligation and incentives. So far, the context of the pediatric regulation was not fit for purpose. The first thing we ask is to look at the mechanism of action of a medicine to decide if yes or not this medicine should be developed in children. An example, a drug for lung cancer was waived in 2011 because lung cancer does not exist in children. This drug, demonstrated by academia, provide 80% cure response rate in a lymphoma in children. It took 10 years for getting the same drug approved in adults to be approved in children. Why? Because the legislation said if the disease does not exist in adults, the companies should not develop the medicine in children. So we ask for making the decision to develop a medicine in children based on the mechanism of action and not the condition. That is the first ask we are asking. Asking is a little bit, but this is what we ask. Second, we want very much that the academic research can really contribute to the development of medicine in a way that it can really accelerate the development of medicines. So this is the second ask that we are asking, if I can say it again. And finally, there is measures on shortages in the regulation. Shortages is very important. We have 60 essential medicine for children with cancer, contributing to the cure of 80% of patients. And clearly, shortages of these old drugs, off patent, really put patients under pressure and the risk of not getting cure. So the measures at the European level for shortage is extremely important to ensure access to all children 24/7 to essential medicine, as well to the innovative medicine.
Yeah. Thank you very much for these points, and I want to underpin, because I think this is...
One sentence. I totally agree. I totally agree. Thank you so much. Yeah.
I just wanted to underpin one thing very important, because the success of the past and the survival rates we are risking today because the old drugs that we're using off-label start to break away. Yeah, so this is what we refer to with the essential list. And then we have the lack of innovation, yeah, and it's also a story about curing better. Yes, children survive, but at a high burden of late effects, up to 60% and increasing. So we need new drugs, better drugs. We are not at the end of the story. Drug shortages, maybe an industry view on this.
Thank you. So I'm in total agreement as well that we need to build on the successes, but more needs to be done. In our view, for sure, imposing additional obligations or punitive measures is not a way to achieve and incentivize the industry to invest more in a very challenging area. And those types of obligations, we see them being proposed in the pharmaceutical legislation when it comes to the development, but also to the supply and availability of medicines for pediatric children, for pediatric disease for children. So the proposal the Commission has proposed that companies are supplying or making available medicines all across Europe, and this is an objective that we also endorsed. We are also concerned about the inequalities and the delays in access. But we also need to take into consideration what are the realities on the ground and if making all those medicines available is possible. Because we currently face quite important practical and challenges to supply and make medicines available. National budgets are quite diverse and under particular strain. So our ask is to make sure that there is enough flexibility and the legislation allows for the companies to find a practical way of making medicines available all across Europe and not having obligations that would be counterproductive actually and would disincentivize companies from doing more clinical research and providing medicines sooner to European citizens. Thank you.
So thank you for this, and I just want to remind us all, working together, Europe has shown we can make it in view of the Corona crisis, and we managed it. So I think what we sometimes feel is unsurmountable, yeah, because we think there are so many barriers. There is a way if there's a will. Yeah, I think if we can agree on this strong motivation, we will find the ways to put really children in the middle of the interest, because they are small, but their problems and demands are huge. Yeah, and I think it's this recognition by society which is extremely important, to put them into the spotlight and to keep them on the spotlight. Leila, would you like to comment on this?
Oh yes, barriers and inequalities. Those are my topics, certainly. I want to emphasize one sentence which I'm repeating all the time since I'm in childhood cancer world, that all childhood cancer patients should have the same access to the treatment and the same standards of care implemented, doesn't matter from where they come. We are aware that there are European countries which are not in EU, and therefore don't benefit from certain EU projects, from EU regulation. And I think you can agree with me that kids with cancer cannot be blamed, guilty for politicians who are not able to make decisions to make some advances in our countries. So those kids deserve the same treatment, the same access to treatment and access to care as kids from EU. So regarding barriers, what we can all do together, we should strengthen national contact points from parents and patients' perspective, and make them aware of what can be done. Also, we could involve more doctors and EU to sponsor trainings and peer visits to doctors from east part of Europe. We should implement European standard clinical practices, make it accessible to all clinics, to all doctors across Europe. We need to empower and enable doctors and professionals from East Europe to talk to experienced colleagues. And we know that it's matter of time, matter of money, matter of knowledge of English language, for example. We need to make essential medicine available and to increase awareness of it across Europe. And last but not least, to extend, because I really believe in PET-CAN, ERM PET-CAN. I strongly believe I'm EPEG there from the beginning. And I believe extending it to non-EU countries in Europe, that all kids would benefit from it.
Thank you, Leila. Gilles, you want to comment?
If I may.
You may.
On access to new medicine. Europe is fantastic. We have one single approval for any new medicine by the European Medicine Agency and the European Commission. But it doesn't mean, as you know, that the drug is available in all countries. And in SciUp Europe, we look at 3 of the 16 medicines I was mentioning, 5 years after their approval, whether they were or not accessible across Europe. They were not accessible in the 27 member states, but only in between 10 to 12. But more, the time between approval and availability approved in the country with reimbursement was up to 1,200 days, showing that clearly when a drug is approved, it's not approved. It's not available in all countries over the next years. And this is why at the moment, as you know, the proposed revision of regulation by the Commission is stating that a drug, a medicine approved, should be available in all member states within 2 or 3 years. We understand this is complex for pharmaceutical company, but we need to have really measures, especially in this rare disease field. We are not talking about all drugs. We are talking of a specific population dying of cancer. How can we set up specific measures, procurement system, whatever are the system within the HTA regulation, to speed up accessibility to all new innovative medicine across member states? We have facts. we can really set up and work with you, with the people and policymakers, to really change this over the next years, because it's a way to cure more children with cancer.
Thank you very much, Gilles. You want to comment on this one, please, Alexandra?
Yes, and pick up on your point as well, where when there is a will, there is a way. Our companies are willing. Actually, again, as I mentioned, the inequalities is of concern to us as well. We are not only looking at the data, the facts, how many days there is a difference between the countries, but also at the root causes. And we've found that actually, when it comes to the root causes of unavailability and delays in access, in 25% of the cases, it's the companies not launching, not filing for pricing and reimbursement, not placing the products on the market. In 70% of the cases, it's the national processes that are delaying access and availability. But our members are committed to reducing those inequalities, and last year in April, they committed to voluntarily file for pricing and reimbursement in all 27 member states within 2 years. And according to our projections, this will increase availability of medicines across the EU up to 64%. So reducing the time to availability in countries like Romania, my home countries, by 170 days, which is significant. And tracking the launch and the availability of products in an online portal. This is actually where we are able to collect this data on the root causes of unavailability and delays, but also have a serious conversation, an open and constructive dialogue about the pricing of medicines and the evaluation, the HTA implementation, to be able to make sure that medicines are available and accessible. However, punitive measures, like we're seeing proposed in the legislation, in our view, will not have the desired effects. We are doing a study now looking at the implications, the impact, and our data shows that if some of the measures are implemented, the percentage of, there will be a 12% decrease in investment in innovation, in new medicines, so 45 new medicines for rare disease that would help 1.5 million patients across Europe would not be developed. So there is a high risk of, instead of granting more access and sooner and better to patients, the Commission proposals have the unintended and negative effects. So that's why a constructive dialogue on understanding the root causes and addressing them through the right policy tools is what we're asking for.
I think communication is key. We agree.
And working together.
Rose.
Yeah.
Working together.
Yes, István.
Rose.
So we have a good discussion. So before opening up to the floor, please, István.
Yeah. Thank you so much. And I just wanted to tell you three things, 3 sentences. Yes, we have to push the industry, the pharmaceutical industry, because for them, as normal, this is the business. They support, they follow only the business plans. That's why we need the European political structures to push them, and also the member states. So I just wanted to tell you, we have to make the bridge between the industry and our societies, because this is the most important thing. And after and because of the pandemic, we have to tell to ourselves. It was terrible to realize that how the European member states, how the European Union had the feeling about that we are weak when we have a big these kinds of COVID pandemic situation. So we have to strengthening the European industry. That's why for me, when we are talking about the European Health Union, one part is about the accessibility and the public service, health service, and the other part is to support and to strengthening the industry. And it is very important and to make the balance. And the second thing is, for me, you know, Ruth, we talked about it in the past. For me, always to be your guest in any kinds of events, it's a lesson. It's a new school. So thank you so much, because the Gastein every year for me, it's a big lesson. I learned a lot. And the third thing, in a 15 minutes, I have to be on stage here in Riyadh. So I really would like to say hello and goodbye, because I have to go to the conference center now in Riyadh. Mm-hmm. So thank you so much for your invitation, and see you in Brussels next time.
Thank you for being us and for your contributions. I'm looking forward for continued collaborations. Thank you, and have a good conference. Bye-bye. I think we should look now into the audience quickly if we have burning questions, because we are getting close to the end of the session in 7 minutes, so we have to really rush it now a little bit, but let's see what comes from the floor.
Of course. So the discussion online is basically about the challenges we are facing and the actions that can be made from the policy level. So first question could be, what can be done at policy level to improve access and inequity of care? And the second question, more or less related to the first one, what is a concrete thing that national governments could do tomorrow to help solve these challenges?
You want to take the questions, Gilles?
One message: industry should play a better role, but it's not only industry that should make it. So working with you really to develop more medicine access is important. But if we want to achieve the goal, it's not only with industry that we should do it. So this is why at the European level, at the member state level, it's absolutely crucial to continue to invest in access to high quality care at the member state level, to invest into the European reference network, because this is a way to improve access to quality treatment, access to clinical research, and to decrease inequalities. And we need at the European level strong measures for better setting up pediatric cancer comprehensive infrastructures, linked with all the 387 pediatric centers that we do have in Europe taking care of children. We need to have measures within the European health data space, specifics for putting a European childhood cancer data initiative. Because if we want to progress, we want to have Europe able really to provide access to all this data in childhood cancer for care and for research. And we need really measures to invest in the development of new medicines. There's not only the medicine developed in adults that should be developed in children, but we need to see investment in developing specific pediatric anti-cancer medicine, the one that will be targeting the specific alteration in pediatric cancer. Because cancer in children, they are not the same as in adults. There is no breast, no lung, no colon cancer in children. But leukemia, brain tumors, and neuroblastoma, different disease, specific alteration. We need investment through policy level at the European and member states to really develop this specific pediatric medicine that will really be likely to increase cure rate. I think I forgot a few things, but maybe you can complement.
I certainly will, and I think I learned from the Ministry of Health one driving aspect of working together. We need to consider in all this interplay ethical aspects, the legal aspects, more newly interoperability, IT aspects that refers to the European health data space, but also societal and economic aspects that play a strong role, because there we also have a major source of inequalities across Europe. And we have to face this, how to collaborate on all this level to make things happen. And I want to shed light also on one thing, because we didn't have a lot of time to talk about the cross-border clinical trials, and to round up also what the ERNs can do. Leila pointed it out: education, twinning, helping each other. This is high on the agenda of the year ends. This is a program that we will drive again for the next 4 years. Yeah, and we need these resources to bring up more equality. And then I have a very specific topic, because currently when we take patients cross-border, usually it's just for standard of care, but not for innovation. So this is another of these multiple aspects to be addressed, that we need a revision of the S2 cross-border healthcare, because this comes down when who pays for the treatment in another country. It seems it's regulated, but in truth, it's not when it comes down to innovation. Yeah, when we need really to take children and families to the high expertise centers so that they can access the innovation. So this is again another aspect, on how to tackle the inequalities. So broad involvement. So I invite. There are no more other aspects from the audience. Then I would like a final comment by my dear speakers, panelists that are with me. Gilles, can I start with you for a final comment?
The team was learning from pediatric oncology, childhood cancer success. As you saw, we did have, and we do have, major success. 80% of children and young people of cancer can be cured in Europe. But it means that it is not solved. Some people said, okay, that's achieved. You know, we are 50% in adults. It's really there where effort should be put. We say this is still a public health issue. This is the leading cause of death by disease in this population of children and young adults with cancer. So the message to you today is really from a policy making topic. We need also to continue at the European level and the member state level to set up the capability to cure more children, to cure them better and tackle the inequalities.
Thank you, Gilles. Alexander.
Thank you so much for a very interesting debate. From my side, the takeaway is that there is no silver bullet to solve issues on the short term. And definitely there needs collaboration for the long term, for all stakeholders to be involved. From our member side, the companies are investing in this area for the long term and would like a seat at the table to be able to co-create the right scientifically based medicines for children.
Leila, a closing remark.
Yes, thank you for having me even online. I cannot agree more with all of you. 80% is good number, but it's still not satisfying. We don't want one single child to die of cancer. We are not satisfied if it is not 100%. So keep going, communication, collaboration, that's the key. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Is there any burning questions from the audience that is present in the room? Yes, please.
Hi, it's Laura from Cancer Research UK. So
You have the microphone coming.
Thank you. Yeah, it's Laura Williams from Cancer Research UK. So obviously some of you know probably better than I do how Cancer Research UK works across Europe on collaborating across borders on clinical trials and so on. Everyone across Europe suffers if it is harder to work across borders simply for political reasons. And I wondered if you had any reflections on how the EU can better support, your work with your counterparts in countries that are not, or sadly no longer, member states.
For us, UK is still within SciUp Europe. We don't see any difference from an academic standpoint, from a parent standpoint, of before and after Brexit. That's a key message. We learned that finally UK is joining Horizon Europe recently. That's good. And really, we want to continue to work with our colleagues in the UK for the patient in the UK. Because we need all, and I think you got the point that this is all together, working together across Europe that we achieve where we are today and where we want to go next.
Any other question from the audience? No, if this is not the case, then maybe a very brief closing remark from my side. I think in the next year NPET-CAN period, we very much were invited to focus also on help towards the Ukraine. And we took this topic back to the Commission level to consider also non-political Europe member states, so that we could facilitate through the network the collaborations. I think we have long-standing worldwide collaborations academically, but somehow we need this possibility in the legislative systems to really give the advice and to have a stronger support in working together. And I want to come back on one thing I'm proud, having been on the Cancer Mission Board in pediatric cancer. What we have brought to the field is something that Istvan also pointed out. We developed the concept of a survivorship passport, which means really capturing the treatment burden and then advising on expected late effects so that they have lifelong guidance on what might to be expected to get a better cure and lifelong practically. And this crystallized now in the Smart Care project that's previously was pointed out, and it is a rollout into the adult phase, and it's EU funded. So yes, this is my conclusive remark. Pediatric oncology has things to bring to the table, and I think this is what we are working for, and I think in this working together we will create a better future for pediatric cancer patients, survivors, but for the cancer community at large. Thank you very much.